Hi guys, Nick Jennison for Guitar Interactive, and on the test bench today we have the PE-480 from our friends at Aria Guitars. It's a fine looking single cutaway beast that mirrors the classic lines of Aria's historic PE guitars from the late 70s and early 1980s, albeit with a new headstock design. It's your classic twin humbucker, 24¼ inch scale, you know what I'm trying to say kind of guitar, but there are some subtle differences that hark back to those historic models that we'll talk about in just a moment. Now, in the intro, you heard me playing all of the notes through the very gained out Gain 2 channel of our Victory VX100 Super Kraken. Before we go any further, let's do a quick bit of cleaner playing and then we'll talk about the spec. Okay, so we've heard the guitar distorted, we've heard it clean. Let's talk about some specs, beginning up at the headstock end. So the first major departure from the historic PE guitars of the 70s and 80s is this new headstock shape, which rather than having the same profile on both sides has a slight offset. And you'll notice that the 3-side tuning pegs are also offset. I would imagine this is to help string pull and tuning stability, and it also looks a little bit nicer in my opinion. It's a little bit more modern. Now turning things over, you'll notice that we have a 3-piece maple neck with walnut stripes. It's a very strong construction method, and it means that we don't need a volute to accommodate for the angled back headstock design. The tuning machines are Grovers and they do the job really rather well. They feel good in the hand, nice smooth action. They're not locking, they're pretty standard fare, but they do a very good job of getting the guitar in tune and keeping it there. Now the neck is finished in kind of a gloss sort of finish, but it's not a typical high gloss. It has a certain satiny feel about it, but it's definitely not your typical satin kind of feeling neck. It's a lot more like almost like a nitro feeling kind of finish, although it's definitely not finished in nitro, certainly not at the reasonable price point that this guitar finds itself at. Now, if we turn it back over to the fretboard, the fingerboard is made of a material called tech wood, and I'm not 100% sure what tech wood is because I couldn't find any information on the subject from Aria. I'm guessing it's a kind of composite that has the look and sonic characteristics of rosewood, and given that rosewood is becoming more and more expensive these days, that is a cost-cutting measure that lots of guitar manufacturers are turning to. It certainly doesn't affect the feel or the playability of the guitar, or for that matter, the aesthetic. I was kind of quite taken aback when I found out that it wasn't in fact rosewood, because it does look very similar. Now, the tonal impact that this may have, there is a lot of debate as to whether the fretboard wood actually makes a difference. I think it does, but without an A/B test, it's very hard to tell. Certainly, the guitar doesn't want forced sound. It sounds really rather good. Now, the frets are kind of a medium jumbo size. They're not quite as small as you'd find in some of Aria's other guitars, but they're definitely not your typical jumbo massive modern frets. They do feel very comfortable. Me personally, I would prefer a very tall fret, but that's just my tastes. For this kind of classic guitar design, it feels very appropriate. And of course, the block inlays are a nice touch. They look really rather nice, and they're very easy to see on a dark stage, I would imagine. Now, turning it over one more time, I want to show you this. This is the Heelless neck joint, and this is a really cool feature. We have a set-in neck, but then it's carved away so that the maple neck meets the mahogany body without the presence of a heel, and this really helps upper fret access and just general playing comfort with this guitar, especially when you get up into the dusty end. And you'll notice once again that the back is made of mahogany. You'd expect that from this type of guitar, but you know, it's nice to see. Sometimes you'll see cheaper woods used, especially on these more affordable guitars, but this is a nice mahogany body, albeit made of 3 pieces, but that is quite common these days and certainly nothing to be worried about. Now, If we go back to the front, we have this lovely quilted maple veneer. There's not a maple cap on this, so we don't have any of that snappy maple tone being added by our cap, although it is a very deeply arched top, which does feel really nice. However, I would probably argue that the maple neck is adding enough snap to offset the fact that the body is largely mahogany with a thin veneer. Now, in terms of electronics, we have two classic power humbuckers, which are kind of warm and middly sounding and generally quite low output. And they're controlled by this three-way switch up here in this nice recessed little area for your switch. And then we have the usual quota of volume, volume, tone, tone for the bridge and the neck pickup respectively. And these two switches will put these pickups either in series or in parallel. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, series essentially is the way humbuckers tend to operate. They're normally wired in series, and that means one coil is feeding into the other coil, and it generally creates a louder and thicker tone. However, when you put it into parallel, it means that the coils aren't running into each other, they're running kind of simultaneous, and they can also be running slightly out of phase, although that's a wiring option that's not present on this guitar. And what that generally produces is an Aria, more open tone that's closer to a single coil, but not as close as, for example, a coil split. The benefit of this, however, is that it doesn't introduce any additional hum, because it's still hum cancelling in parallel mode, which is really rather cool. We'll explore the series and parallel tones in just a moment, but before we do, just wanted to call attention to this lovely bridge and tailpiece assembly, which is a take on your classic Tune-o-matic, but it's very, very easy to adjust. For my money, the action straight out of the box was a little high, but it was as simple as taking a screwdriver to this bridge, and we managed to get the action around 1 mil on the treble side and slightly over on the bass side with not a trace of buzz, which testifies to how good the fretwork is on this guitar straight out of the box. And everything feels nice and smooth under the hand. It's very comfy. There are no sharp edges, and we have individual saddles for adjusting your intonation should you need to, although we didn't need to make any adjustments out of the box. Anyway, that's all of the specs. I think that's fairly comprehensive. I think you'll agree. Let's listen to some more tones. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my cleaner sound, and I'll take you on a tour of these pickups. We'll start with everything in series, and we'll move from the bridge to the middle to the neck, and then we'll do the same thing with both pickups set to parallel so you can hear the effect this has on the tone. So while the humbuckers sound clear and warm in the series setting, for my money, the parallel is a little thin and perhaps lacking in character when you're playing clean. However, this may be a fine way to get a little bit more sparkle and a bit more clarity out of more gainy sounds. To that end, we're going to pile on a bit more distortion, and we'll do another pickup tour, and we'll do the same settings from series bridge through to middle to neck, and then we'll do the same thing in parallel, and we'll hear how that affects our tone. And it's really with this kind of setting where the series parallel switches shine, because it enables you to go from those big full-fat humbucker tones to something resembling the classic mini humbucker sounds of the 70s and 80s, with their kind of extra sparkle on the top end, nasal mid-range and tucked lows. Now, we've heard the sounds of this guitar with lots of, a little bit of, and very little gain. We're going to try some stylistic specific applications now, and we're going to start with some modern blues type playing. So the thick and full sounding neck pickup is perfect for bluesy lead lines, and knocking it into the parallel mode gives us a little more clarity for those double stops. Now the next application I want to try is as a classic rock riff machine, and for this we're going to explore the bridge pickup again in both series and parallel modes. So with this mid-pushed classic rock gain sound, you can use the series parallel switch on the bridge humbucker to essentially take you from Angus to Malcolm Young, which is a really rather cool and useful feature, and I think it sounds great in both modes. Now, one last application we're going to try is piling a load of gain on and seeing how well these pickups retain their character in more of a heavy riffing kind of style. I'm loath to use the word metal because we're not going to be able to downtune this terribly far, given that it comes strung with 10s and it is your typical 24 3/4 inch scale length. However, we are going to take it as low as we can get away with, and we'll see again how well these pickups retain their character. So while there's plenty of character to help those low-tuned riffs and searing leads poke out of a mix, there's not a whole lot of separation on more complex chords with this level of gain. However, it should be noted that these are very much classic voiced humbuckers, and if you were to use this guitar for more of a heavy or more of a metal kind of context, you would perhaps do well to swap out your humbuckers for your favorite pair of high-powered, super clear humbuckers from, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of brands out there that do great pickups. That said, you certainly don't need to do that to get convincing heavy tones out of this guitar, and it actually performs very, very well as a lead guitar machine in this kind of context. So anyway guys, this has been the Aria PE-480. It's a beautiful looking guitar. It is very reasonably priced and features some really nice specifications that you might not find on other guitars at this price point, especially that lovely neck joint and this really nice arched body shape. It's a very very, very comfortable playing guitar, and it sounds great, albeit within a certain spectrum of sounds. So don't expect the sparkliest of clean sounds or the most articulate of metal sounds, but for everything in between, from blues to soul, classic rock, all that sort of business, it's just spot on. Anyway guys, my name is Jennison for Guitar Interactive. One more time, this is the Aria PE-480, and I will see you next time. Thanks for checking out this video on the Guitar Interactive YouTube channel. We really do appreciate it. Drop us a comment below and let us know what you liked and what you think we should cover in the future. And check out these links here for more great content. We are, of course, your home for all things gear related, and we have killer interviews and tuition and all manner of stuff coming up for you in the near future. So hit that subscribe button down there. Make sure you hit the notification icon too, so we can keep you up to date with the latest and greatest news on all things guitar.